a home is better than no home, right? So if somebody is willing to adopt a dog out of a shelter and keep it from living in a kennel and give it love and affection and, a life of more than nothing, right? Then I think that's what we want to encourage.
Welcome to MythBarkers, where we make dog parenting easier by sniffing out the facts and debunking dog tales.
If you're just joining MythBarkers for the first time, you should know we are very passionate about adoption and rescue and advocating for fostering and supporting your local rescues wherever you are. Last season, we talked with a few different rescuers who are saving dogs all over the country, primarily in the South and also in Korea, and helping them get adopted into their forever homes. We also spoke with trainers tied to local rescues. We've spoken with the incredible Isabel Klee, everyone's favorite foster mom, and we haven't actually dug into the adoption process yet, and it feels like it's about time to do that. Earlier this year, USA Today published an article that highlighted a lot of people's frustration and criticism with the rescue's adoption process kind of as a whole. As an adoption coordinator myself, I have to tell you, it got under my skin. This is something I'm very passionate about because I spend countless hours every week talking with prospective adopters, vetting their applications, connecting them with fosters, doing meets, all the things in hopes that we can match an applicant with a rescue dog that fits their lifestyle, but also giving a dog a great home that suits their needs. There's so many elements in the adoption process I want to get into. And I'm so excited because today's guest has built a rescue that has successfully implemented an open adoption process. I can't wait to learn more about what she's doing and how it's working, but I'll let Yena introduce her.
So, our guest today is a former public school music teacher and a Broadway pianist. Our guest took quite a roundabout way to get into the wild and wonderful world of animal welfare. Back in 2015, she started a local rescue that has since adopted out more than 9,000 dogs into their forever homes. She's personally fostered hundreds of dogs, and she's been featured on The Today Show and The Wildest. She's the founding executive director of Muddy Paws, based in New York City. Please join us in welcoming Rachael Ziering to MythBarkers. Rachael, thank you so much for coming by, and also lovely Ethel for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Rachael. This is one of my 4 dogs, personal dogs. So this is Ethel. She's about 10, and she came from New York City.
Oh my
She
goodness,
really
she's
looks
beautiful.
so happy and content in your arms.
And she's a little confused, I think, about why she's up here and not down in the puddle that's happening over with the other dogs. But
She's like, you didn't tell me we're gonna be a part of a podcast today,
no,
Mom.
no, she's a good girl though. Yeah.
So Rachel, before we jumped on, we were talking about there's so many misperceptions about adoption and rescue. One of the prevalent ones being about the adoption process itself, and sometimes people say it's overly complicated or rescues are maybe making it intentionally hard to adopt a dog. Before we get into the specifics about what you're doing and why it's working, what do you think about this?
So I actually think that it's in a lot of cases it's true, but it's very unfortunate that it's true, and it's something that we really should be working to prevent from happening. I think it's really important that everyone who wants a dog should get a dog, and rescue is the best way to do that. And I think there's a lot of barriers in place from some groups, some people, and it's just they just don't need to be there. There are better, friendlier, more welcoming ways to do it.
Last season, we had the wonderful Isabel Klee join us to talk all about fostering, and she couldn't stop singing the praises of Muddy Paws Rescue. Having fostered so many pups for you in the past, we learned Muddy Paws has an open adoptions process that removes barriers to adoption and includes applicants from all backgrounds, opting in a conversation-based approach to selecting adopters. This is a pretty new concept. Can you talk us through this process and how it's different from a typical adoption process that many rescues and shelters currently use, and why it's so important for both the dogs as well as the adopters?
Sure. Yeah. So it's funny that you say it's a new process because it has been around for 10 plus years, I think, at this point, but a lot of groups just still don't subscribe to it. And really what it is, we actually don't even call it an adoption application at Muddy Paws anymore. We call it a registration process. Application has this kind of implication that you could get denied, right? And we generally, very, very rarely for like extreme safety reasons, we might make a decision like that. But 99.9% of the people who register with us are gonna end up with a dog if they want one. So really for us, it's a conversational process where it's tricky also because we're remote. So it's not like you can walk into a shelter and just have that conversation, which is what a lot of actual physical shelters will do. But what we've done is sort of try to make our process as friendly as possible, even though people are still filling out a form technically. We use type form, which is like sort of a really friendly, like chatbot almost type form. And yeah, and we made a really big point a couple years back of starting to call it registrations versus applications. We don't want people to feel like they, have a chance of us telling them they're not fit to be a parent. We just want to collect information from them so that we can help them find the best match for themselves and for their lifestyle. So that's what our process is basically we general registration where we just take kind of the basics of the phone, email, all of the stuff we need, and then we have them fill out a second form with that, just we call it our matchmaker form or our matchmaker details form. So that's what people give us, and that way we can kind of use that in the future to help them find the dog they're looking for. We also don't have people register for a specific dog. They can let us know if they're interested in a specific dog, but they register. And then once they're registered, they're good for a year. And they can kind of keep coming in and out and working with us to find the right dog.
So how does that process work? Like if I was someone who's registered and you were a coordinator or a processor, how does that go?
Yeah, so right now, basically, once you're registered, you can stop by any of our adoption events, which happen weekly every Saturday. You're welcome to drop in, or if you see a dog that you're interested in on our website, on our social media, etc., you can email ahead of time and set up an appointment for that dog specifically. So there's a number of different ways to do it. Sometimes people show up and they don't know really what they are looking for, but they want to work with one of our volunteer matchmakers, and they sort of help guide them in the right direction. And sometimes people are, they come in, I want that dog and only that dog. And if we can make it happen for them, we will.
Yeah, I think a lot of the sort of hesitation around people reaching out to rescues to adopt is that they fear that they're going to get rejected because they don't have all of the conditions in place. Maybe they don't own a home, maybe they're a student right now, maybe they don't have a partner and they're by themselves, maybe they're working part-time and it's not a remote job. But also, I think in many scenarios, these aren't the only factors that create a success between a dog and they're human. Can you speak to us a little bit about what you've experienced in this space, accepting a range of adopters rather than the ones that seem to have all of the like quote unquote perfect parameters?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we get, people from all walks of life, from all areas. We get a lot of people, especially in New York City, who come up to us and say, "Well, I live in an apartment," and I'm like, "Well, we all live in apartments,
Yeah.
So if part of open adoptions is, not a home is better than no home, right? So, if somebody is willing to adopt a dog out of a shelter and keep it from living in a kennel and give it love and affection and, a life of more than nothing, right? Then I think that's what we want to do, what we want to encourage. We've had people come to adoption events, and one of my favorite questions that I get all the time is like, what are the requirements? Like, what do I need? What do I have to show you to, for you to give me a dog? And I'm like, I have to fill out the paperwork, but like, really, it's not like we have like a checkbox of like, you need a yard, you need an apartment, you need somebody who's home all the time. People ask that all the time in New York. I work all day. So do we all, everybody has jobs and everybody like has lives, and that's just how it works. And a home is still better than shelter. So that's, yeah, I don't know if that answers it, but.
Are there guardrails in place? How do you know that like who the matchmakers are matching the dogs with the applicants, like that they're going to be a good fit? And are there guardrails in place to make sure that you said there were a couple instances where someone would maybe not be a good fit?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm thinking of like very rare instances where like sort of severe, if we've had like a warning about a certain person from, the shelter said that, hey, we know this person's probably going to reach out, but they actually have like a abusive history or whatever. But those are really, really few and far between. In terms of the matchmaking, I mean, we have as many guardrails as we can, but here's the thing is that we don't know. We never know for sure, right? If something's going to be a good match. Our matchmakers are trained as best as they can be to help people match dogs based on, what they're looking for, but then also their lifestyle, their work hours, and again, that doesn't mean that, you're not going to get a dog if you work, because we all work, but what's going to be best. And if it doesn't work out, a big part of it is that, there's no judgment on our end. We will always take the dog back. And if somebody comes, back to us a couple of weeks later, or a couple months, or a couple of years, this isn't working for whatever reason, or my life has changed and I no longer have what I feel like this dog needs, then we will take the dog back. And we always encourage people to come to us first. We're not going to tell people they can't adopt from us again, if it was something that could be expected to happen, right? Like a dog could come home from a shelter and be sort of low energy, and their personality could change over a couple of months, or especially in New York City, sometimes we know that dogs come from places that are quieter, more rural, more suburban, and then they just really don't do well in the city, and we don't want to force a dog to live somewhere they're miserable either, right? So yeah, but yeah.
It's a really gracious approach for both people and dogs. And I love that there is a lot of care even after the adoption process is complete. Like if it's not the right fit, it's not end all be all. There can still be better solutions, as long as there's
Yeah.
like a community of love behind them, as long as there's that like the intention to make sure that they're good and happy at the end of the day. I really love this approach. I feel like it takes the pressure off of the people a lot, and through that, they can be emboldened to really step up to the responsibility of being there for the dog and like learning from them as they go through life as well. I really love that. I think it's really beautiful. I know that you guys also have a lot of medical dogs and dogs that need special help. Um, Maybe behavioral, maybe health challenges. Is there a different process to adopting these dogs out that need a little bit more attention and love?
Medically, we will always try to make sure that know what's going on with the dog before we adopt it out, and B, just that we do as much as we can within reason for that dog prior to adoption. There are some cases too where if there's something pre-existing going on, that we will continue to support that dog, for a set period of time post adoption, or if something comes up that was related to pre-existing, etc. For the most part, a dog is a dog, and we try to just provide all the individual support that dog might need, regardless of what that support is.
You had some medical professionals join the rescue organization.
Yeah.
Um, are they full time?
So yeah, so we currently have a vet part-time on our staff. And he's wonderful. He's been in shelter rescue medicine for a long time, and he's great at it. He joined our staff part-time last year. We're actually currently building out a clinic space in our basement in our headquarters in Hell's Kitchen.
Amazing.
So we've been doing our own surgeries for a little over, well, a year and a half or so now, in partnership with Meow Parlor, which is a cat cafe in Soho. But we're moving to our own space. So
Wow, this is
yeah,
very
so we're really excited
exciting.
about that. And we, that's a resource that a lot of rescue groups do not have, right? And for a long time, we worked with partner vets. We still do for emergencies and ortho cases, and the stuff that's sort of more specialized. But yeah, we're really
Gotcha.
excited to have him. Yeah.
Oh, we can't wait for this next chapter. Congratulations.
That's
Thank
going to
you.
be huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're pumped.
I'm curious, you founded Muddy Paws back in 2015, and you mentioned that you've been doing this open adoption process. It's not new, it's something you've been doing for a while. Have you always used this approach to adoption? Was it something that you knew going into founding Muddy Paws you wanted to use, and why? Like, did you have a different experience?
Yeah, so when I got into rescue, I was working, volunteering with another group, who definitely did not have an open adoptions process. And I was brand new in rescue, and I kind of was just like, oh, well, I guess this is how it is. This is what we have to do. And when I left that group for a number of other reasons, I kind of discovered this broader world of animal welfare, right? And there's other shelters, there's other rescues, there's national conferences. And I learned about this kind of conversational approach of open adoptions. And it like put a name to, I guess, the thing that I felt like was the right thing to do anyway.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, no, for the first year or so, I would say we were not practicing open adoptions really. It was a long form. It was, multiple references. It was vet checks. We never did home checks, which is something that I know a lot of groups do, and I can't encourage them enough to stop doing that.
Mm.
Not only because, well, really just because, the time that it takes to do that kind of a thing. And what are you going to see? You're going to see someone's apartment. I never really understood what you're going to learn from home check, right?
Mm.
That you can't, get from just sort of having a conversation with someone and trusting that they're telling you the truth,
Mm.
So we didn't always practice this way. It was in 2017 I kind of learned more about the broader animal welfare world, and was like, well, yeah, obviously we should do this.
Interesting.
So Muddy Paws is a foster-based rescue that has over 2,000 people in the foster network. This is highly impressive. Can you talk us through how you built that foster community? I'm guessing this was like a slow churn, didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of love involved. I just love to hear what happened behind the scenes.
When I started, it was me and a couple other volunteers really who came over from this other group that I was with before. And really from there, it was just word of mouth.
Mm.
Honestly, telling your friends, telling your coworkers. We've never really done any sort of like paid advertising or anything like that. But also, as we gained adopters, we just gained more traction in the community and our name got out there more. I remember way back, I used to go to the dog run with my dogs, and people would ask, "Oh, like what rescue do you, work with?" And I would say Muddy Paws, and oh, I've never heard of that. And now it's so funny because everyone's like, "Oh my God, Muddy Paws!" I know it's just like surreal, um, but yeah, it really has just been a lot of word of mouth and like natural growth over the years. And, we do have 2,000 people who are registered, but really at any given time, it's like maybe 10% of those people have told us that they're available to take a dog.
Mm.
People in New York are very, like generally very fluid. Like people travel a lot. People, are here only for the summer or leave for the summer or, only have a weekend here or there to foster. So we do have a big network, but the number of sort of like people who can really sort of full-time foster a dog until adopted, which, could be weeks, could be months. That is something we still really need. So if you're out there looking to foster, don't hesitate to get.
Definitely register to become a foster, and
Yes.
if you're active, even better.
Yeah.
I also feel that hearing from Isabel how much support Muddy Paws gives to the fosters in terms of covering the food and if there's any potential vet care that needs to be covered, I think that is a really amazing thing to let people know because the barrier for some people is that they're not sure they can cover the costs of fostering. They're not sure what they're supposed to supply and what the rescue can supply. So I think in a lot of ways, this contributed to the success of the foster network because you're providing more support there and making it a lot easier for fosters to say yes and take a chance on fostering, and then they get hooked, and then it's over.
Yeah, we try to provide everything we can, and we never want financials to be a barrier to fostering. It's a reason that a lot of people foster and don't adopt because they're worried about the
Mm.
cost of everything. When we started out, it was a little different. We didn't have a lot of the resources and partnerships and everything that we have now. So basically, we will always provide, if needed, like the crate and the food and the toys, and every foster gets kind of like a starter goodie bag with a little bit of everything. We're always super grateful if fosters can provide their own food or toys, etc. But if it's a barrier, just ask us and we'll give you whatever you need. And
It's
the medical care, of
fantastic.
course, that's on us. So,
Fantastic.
yeah.
That's amazing. How do you approach the foster matchmaking process? Because I'm sure that's also an important piece, making sure that the fosters are able to handle the dogs in
Yeah,
need.
so we have a couple of different ways we go about that. When people register to foster, they can give us their preferences. So that would include like, age, size. They can tell us if their building has actual restrictions versus their own personal preference. And we have a foster portal that people can kind of keep those things up to date in. So they can update their preferences if they want. They can give us their availability. So ahead of time, we can say which weeks are you going to be around and available. And we'll use that information as we're doing our outreach for specific dogs. We also, as of I want to say it was January this year. We now have in our foster portal sort of a browse page where fosters can see a live view of, what are the needs right now? Does this dog
Wow.
needs a whole new foster, or this dog needs like 5 days coverage coming up? Or we actually started doing something called aspiring pack members, where these are New York dogs specifically that we want to be able to pull from ECC, but we can't pull until we know that we have a committed foster. So sometimes we're able to pull, I think it was like 60 something dogs earlier that I checked this year that started off as aspiring pack members in our portal. And then because somebody stepped up and said I could foster, we were able to commit to that dog.
Wow.
I think this is like so impressive that the humans in the background are like getting really tech savvy to help the dogs. Meanwhile, they're just like,
Yeah, yeah, we're really I'm kind of a tech nerd. So, all of the tech development that's happened over the last like 4 or 5 years is it's a large part of my job at this point, and I
wow.
enjoy it. But really I feel like there's just so much we can do that going into rescue done right was kind of what I was aiming for, and I just feel like technology can
Mm.
support that a lot in terms of making things easier and more accessible and more efficient. Efficiency is a big thing for me.
Rescue done right. I love this line. That's like
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Um, so can you expand a little bit more on your involvement with the ACC?
Yeah. So the New York City Animal Care Centers, we are New Hope partners. We have been since 2017, and only was 2017 because it took a little while to get the paperwork through.
Okay.
But we work with them to pull as many dogs as we can into foster care. We at this point this year, I think we have taken right around 150 or maybe coming up on 150 from ACC so
Wow.
far. Last year we pulled a total of 170 something, so we're really kind of doubling down on it this year. They're not having a great year. They're
No.
overcrowded. There's crates stacked in every hallway. They really need the help. So what we do when we work with them is generally we try to pull the dogs who are harder placements, right? And that includes larger dogs, bully breeds, seniors, the dogs who need the medical care, especially because we now do have that in-house vet, part-time vet. So, when we pull dogs from them, we will generally do the alter in our care versus asking them to do it for us. We can pull
Mm.
dogs who need echocardiogram. We have to kind of keep an eye on how much responsibility we're taking on, but we really can take on a lot of those cases that some other foster-based New Hope groups can't. So we try to help where it's needed most. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Do you find, are there challenges being a foster-based rescue not having a kind of brick and mortar shelter where dogs can go?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You know, we opened our location in Hell's Kitchen in 2021. And prior to that, we operated out of my garage. I lived in Astoria, and there's a garage kind of underneath my apartment. So that was our storage. We opened the location in 2021, and everybody's first question was, is it going to be a shelter? Are you going to keep the dogs there? And while it would be nice to have kind of a place to go in, emergencies, or, so a foster has a health emergency or has to leave town or whatever, it's much better for the dogs to be in a home.
Mm.
And we learn, not only is it better for the dog, we learn more about them, and we're able to make better matches with the humans, right? So dogs in a shelter, kind of a crapshoot, I guess, of, like you might have a connection with the dog, but you don't have information about what they're going to be like in a home. And it can be
Mm.
very different. So, that's why we stick to it, and why I don't even want us to have the option of doing that. But yes, it does make it a lot harder, because, our foster staff are constantly, every day, it's so many balls in the air of, dogs who are needing to move soon and trying to find new fosters for them, and obviously trying to get them adopted because that would be best.
Mm.
But yeah, it's definitely it's tricky for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I think seeing the dogs completely decompressed in a home would really show a lot of their personality that could probably be included in the adoption profile, like the
Yeah.
full spectrum of how they are when they're relaxed and feel safe in an environment versus, I guess, in a crate in a shelter. It's a very different dynamic.
Yeah. It is. And, a lot of our adopters say specifically that one of the reasons they come to us is that we have more information on the dogs. And not only do we have it, but going back to technology for a second, we also are very detailed on our website of, the information's kind of direct from the foster parent, right? So people can
Yeah.
read, what's this dog's schedule like? What do they like? What makes them happy? What makes them scared? What's their house training situation? Great training. And that's all, again, kind of like live updated. Like it's always up to date. It's just coming directly from our database. So, but yeah, that's something that people come to us specifically for. And a lot of times it's funny, we'll get people who come to us saying, I want to adopt an ACC dog, but I want to adopt it from Muddy Paws because I want to have that information about how the dog does in the home.
Because that's a layer of work that can bring the adopter closer to the dog, and like they're
Mhm.
just more information for the matchmaking is better.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you feel when a foster parent foster fails?
So we try to call it a foster to forever adoption, only because
Okay, foster to
failure has this
forever.
negative. I know, but I still call it, but personally I still. But no, I mean, I think, it's bittersweet for us, right?
Yeah.
We usually lose a foster. Occasionally we'll have somebody who adopts and then continues fostering, and that's best case scenario.
Mm.
But obviously most people, more than one is as daunting to most people. I say this with four sitting right next to me, but
And Laura as well.
but I'm a weird case. So, but yeah, no, a lot of people do register to foster with us specifically knowing that they want to adopt.
Mm.
And sometimes they end up adopting their first, and great, then that dog has a home. But sometimes they'll foster for a little while until they find one that really, fits what they're looking for. Or sometimes people have no intention of adopting and then they foster with us for years, and then surprise, one day they want to adopt their dog, and then we're really sad. But but it's good for the dog. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
The fact that you've adopted over 9,000 dogs in just over 10 years is mind-blowing and so incredible. And I'm so impressed with what you've built and how you're doing it in a different way, or something that's not typical to most rescues or shelters. How do you support your dogs once they're in their forever homes? Is there a continued relationship with Muddy Paws?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also one of the things I think that our adopters like is we have our Facebook group called Muddy Paws Pack. And that's, what you'll join as an adopter, foster volunteer. We also have a lot of sort of regular follow-up that we do with adopters. We check in around, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months is kind of the standard.
Yeah.
So we'll check in, make sure everything's going okay. Our adoption staff does spend a fair amount of time doing post-adoption support. So it might be, as simple as sending over some resources, or it might be a phone call. But yeah, we do try to sort of maintain a relationship. And as it's growing, as we are close to 10,000 dogs, it's a little crazy, but it's yeah, it's definitely something that we value. We also have this year we've added a trainer to our staff, which has been very, very helpful in terms of those, spicy special behavior dogs.
Love them.
And we will actually provide post-adoption support with our trainer directly for a couple of weeks for certain dogs to help them transition into those forever homes. And we've already had huge success with that.
That's huge. Wow.
It
Yeah.
goes a
That's
long
great.
way, the introductory support so that they can decompress properly in the new home.
Yeah.
That's a
I always
great
say it's
asset.
it's hard to do it right the first time, but it's much harder to have to kind of back up and redo it. So setting up for success is something we talk about a lot.
I totally agree with that. We love that there are local focused initiatives like the Native New Yorkers program
Yeah.
that lowers the adoption fee to $150. I believe it was this summer for dogs rescued from local New York City open intake shelters like the ACC.
Mhm.
Why is it so important to create these opportunities for Native New Yorkers?
The Native New Yorkers campaign is really important and special to us. It actually started earlier this year. We had a really generous donor sponsor partial adoption fees for Native New Yorkers, and then we decided to kind of keep it going this summer, especially because the shelters here are I mean, the shelters everywhere are overcrowded, but we feel, a particular responsibility to the shelters in our own backyard.
Yeah.
So that's ACC. We also pull dogs from the ASPCA in New York, and occasionally we'll take in a few strays here and there. So we really want to encourage people to look here first. And, I will say a larger percentage of those dogs tend to be blocky headed, bully types, they've been around the block. And those are the dogs who need us the most, and they're right here. So,
Yeah.
we really want to encourage people to look at them first.
Those are my kind of dogs. I think that it's natural to look at them first. They're so beautiful and wonderful.
They really are.
I mean, Ethel is one of them. So,
oh yeah,
right.
So if you're not in New York City or the surrounding areas, does Muddy Paws adopt out to residents who live? What is your kind of network? How where can people apply from, I guess, to be able to get a dog from Muddy Paws?
So we've had adopters from all over. We do encourage people, especially people who live in maybe southern states where overpopulation is, depending on the day, even worse than it is here. We encourage people to go to their own shelters first, just because, well, if somebody wants to travel 10 hours to adopt one of our dogs, we're going to say, well, that just seems silly and backwards. Like, you must have thousands of dogs within 5 miles of you, right? So we do try to encourage people to do that, but we allow people to register with us from anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have they been primarily, you think, from the Northeast? The bulk of
it's tri-state area. And we get a lot of like Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. We love our suburban adopters, I will say, because we do end up with a lot of dogs who do better out of the city. And most of our foster network is also in the city, so that becomes a challenge. But no, it's we get people from all over, and sometimes it's like a family member of a foster who lives in Iowa or whatever, and so they adopt, and then they figure out the transport. We generally tell people that if the dog is going to be traveling in a car, that's fine. We don't want people to adopt a large dog and then put it in cargo on a plane, just because of the health risks associated with that.
That makes sense.
So what has been the most impactful way to fundraise for critical vet care, foster supplies, and veterinary access?
Storytelling, really, is the way to go. Our funding comes from various sources. We have individual donors, we have some grants, and then we have our adoption fees, which frankly make up a relatively small portion of our revenue at this point. We've only raised our adoption fees once in 10 years, so we're pretty proud of that, and I'm really wanting to keep that where it's at. But in terms of fundraising, people love a good story, and telling the story, showing kind of like the before and after of a dog, that's what's going to kind of encourage people to give. And honestly, Isabel is the master of fundraising and, sort of
storytelling,
pulling heartstrings. Yeah, exactly. So, you were saying that she couldn't stop singing our praises. I can absolutely not stop singing hers as well. She's wonderful. And, she's doing so much good for all dogs everywhere. So,
I absolutely agree. I don't think there has been a voice that is so powerful in fostering. She really sheds light to every part of the process, the difficult parts, the beautiful parts, and it just shows so honestly, and you really get a sense of how fulfilling it is, even though it's not always peachy keen. So
not always, wonderful, but it's always fulfilling.
So rewarding.
The resiliency of the dogs, that's what I think we don't share enough. I think so many people, in my experience, take a dog, they want it to be perfect, like within the first couple of days. And it's just like to see where a dog goes from day 1 to 3 weeks. I've had this with my fosters and like adopted out dogs. And it's just, it's so remarkable to see their capacity to grow and love and get comfortable with time, love, feeling safe.
It's wonderful. I mean, my personal favorites are the types that are like super in their shell, and don't want to come out of the crate. And probably you're thinking about Tiki now.
Tiki, yeah.
Right. But the little ones aren't really my thing. That's I'll leave those for somebody else. But my dogs, well, three of my 4 dogs have been, pretty petrified of everything when they've gotten here, and scared of people, scared of dogs, scared of noises, scared of, just everything. And it's been, incredible. Every now and again, we still look at our one of our dog, Emmy, and she got here super shut down. I have videos of her like trying to take a step out of the crate and then coming back, and like it's just, and now she loves people. She's so wonderful, she's so trusting. Those are the types that I love the most.
Yeah, they leave a special imprint. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can totally relate to that.
We like to use MythBarkers to, also evangelize and get people involved. What are the different ways that anyone can either volunteer for you, Muddy Paws, or their local rescue organization or open intake shelter? Do you have suggestions?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're in the area or, remote and wanting to work to volunteer with Muddy Paws, we always need foster parents, we need adopters for sure. Adopter interest really has been slowing down lately, and that's a big thing that, well, actually, I think that, the barriers to adoption in a lot of places are forcing more people to breeders and pet stores, which is not what
Mm.
we want. So adopt from us if you can't find one somewhere else, or if you're having issues getting through, talk to us. We'll help you out. But we always need in-person volunteers. We need you can be a volunteer matchmaker and help make those happy stories happen for people. We have remote opportunities as well. But basically anything you can do, whether it's fostering, whether it's donating, if you don't have the time but you have the means, there's a million different ways to get involved. And I would recommend asking your local shelter or rescue, if that's not us.
Just starting that conversation with curiosity and offering the skill set that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know, what we're going to need. We have sometimes now that we have our vet in-house, we have some people who are human doctors or human EMTs or, and they're super helpful at our clinic. So you never know.
There's
Yeah.
no limits,
Yeah.
listeners. No limits at all.
So I have one more question for you, a broader question, because we talked about open adoption process, the registration process that you had that's been successful. If you could change one aspect of adoption and rescue, kind of across the board, what would it be? Too much change.
There's a
There's
list and a carousel.
I think there's a couple of big ones, if I can
Okay.
give a couple, that, one is we were talking about technology. And honestly, a lot of animal shelters and rescues are stuck in 1995 and through no fault of their own. Sometimes it's just, literally resources, right? They don't have the funds. But a lot of shelters are using paper and pen, right, for a lot of things. And I think a big part of why Mighty Paws is successful is that we are big on efficiency and using technology to help us. And that's not just like to make our lives easier, that's to save our time so that we can put it towards the things that really require the human input and be able to kind of do the focus on the day-to-day work, supporting the fosters, supporting the adopters, working with the dogs directly, right? Obviously, I don't think AI is going to be able to do that anytime soon. So um, that's one big thing. And then I think behavior support would be one of the other biggest things that I think would really, aside from, infinite money, would be the next big best thing to support, is because there's so many dogs and fosters or adopters who are unsuccessful simply because they don't have the tools that they need,
Right.
and aren't set up for success from the start. So really working to kind of A, set expectations, and B, set up for success from a behavioral standpoint, I find makes such a difference for dogs. And wouldn't it be great if every dog could have that same setup?
I love that you said that, because it's so much of what we believe in with MythBarkers. We want to make pet parenting easier. We want to help set these dogs up for success, not just a rescue dogs, but dogs in general. And there's just so much that Yena and I have learned in our experience and with our network, with the help of you and these amazing professionals that we have. We need to share this information to make it easier for the pet parents out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we share a lot of our behavior resources directly on our website. So anybody can go in. We've got a bunch of kind of homegrown videos that we've made over the years. We've got handouts, we've got articles, we've got probably too much, but there's a video on the decompression period that a lot of our adopters have found very helpful. And I would recommend for anyone interested in learning more.
We're gonna watch that right after this.
Get to see more of
Definitely.
me. So
Thank you, Rachel, for joining us today. We have learned so much, and we congratulate you on being able to save so many dogs and for putting together such a wonderful community of people that really love dogs and want to see them succeed, and for setting up for their success.
the goal. So I'm glad it's happening. Thank you
Yes.
so much for, having me on.
And it's only growing.
Thank you, Rachel, and everyone who's been joining us. You can follow Muddy Paws Rescue on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next episode of MythBarkers.
Thank you both.